Hello, how are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
You know what? I am doing, and I'm admiring all those fabulous shoes in the background. I was like, okay, girl.
Listen, can I share something with you that's so funny that I tell people who say that? To me, all of these shoes represent a different stage and a different step in my life, right? There was a time where I could boogie oogie in these right here, okay? And then I went through my era of, let me see, where are they? Over here, these
Uh-huh.
here. Then let's see, these. And then all of a sudden I said, you know what? I think we might be into this stage of my life. Okay. And the funny thing is, as I was reading your book, it reminded me of all the stages of my life. So that's kind of what these shoes represent for me. Difficulties, trials, where you try to do something that it don't fit, but you still keep trying to step in that direction.
Exactly. See, there was an
That's what
era
this
when we were
is.
all very hopeful.
Yes.
You're like, oh yeah, these will be good. Mm-mm,
Mhm,
no,
mhm.
I'm definitely in the sensible shoes category these
Yeah,
days.
as am I. And I think that's what life is really all about, that journey to sensibility. Well, Dr. Malone, where do I begin? First of all, thank you so much for taking this time to speak with me on my platform. It's called Woman to Woman. It's a very loose conversation about all things women, from the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we know it's all of that and in between, right? I want to
Absolutely.
say, first of all, I want to give you your accolades. And I do that because what prompted me to do this was the celebration of National Women's Month. And I began to
Hmm.
think about how we bestow crowns on women of our past and our ancestors and people that came before us. And I thought, but we really don't have enough conversation with people who are here right now, who have made this journey, who have so much to offer in terms of wisdom, who are breaking barriers and whatnot, and just to have everyday good old conversation. And I was so just thrilled to get the invitation from Renata when you were here in LA to have a conversation about your book, Grown Women Talk. And the first thing I thought was, Grown Women Talk? Hold on. I remember a time when, baby, you couldn't be in the room when grown women were talking. You had to have a seat at the kids' table.
That's exactly right.
And so the conversation moved me to say, I don't know if she'll say yes, but I'm going to invite her to come on this platform to have a further discussion, woman to woman, about the things that we go through. So I commend you, first of all, for writing the book. I commend you for the work that you've done and the women that you've helped throughout your career and over the years, from cradle to the grave, basically. And I got to tell you right off top, I have purchased this book for so many of my sisters because I said, you got to read this. And it's not the kind of book that you just sit down and you just read all the way through. It's anecdotal. Like, you need to read it, from time to time. Well, hold on a second. I ain't checking Google. Let me go to Dr. Sharon's book and see what she said. It's that kind of
we
book.
Yeah, because the different chapters will speak to you at different times in your life,
Yeah.
and sometimes it may apply to you, sometimes it may be to your friends or even to your parents. And that's why, I try to write the book that would encompass all of the things that any grown woman should know if you don't know.
Correct. And you, obviously, a doctor and having treated people for 30 plus years, and, just, from celebrities to everyday people, I, it's so much I want to talk to you about. Like, already in my head, in the beginning of the book, you talk about how you've been a doctor, a friend, a sister, a aunt, and all of those things. And immediately, from the moment I met you, and then as I began the journey in the book, I felt like, God, this is such a blessing from you, because in my position, there are no women in my family anymore to turn to. And one of the things that I love so much is when I need answers to questions that only a woman, in my opinion, can give me because she's been through it or she knows what I'm talking about. I felt like I didn't have anybody like that. And I know there are so many other women out there like that. And so, my first question, I already know the answer, but to those who are listening for the first time, I want you to tell everyone your why. Like, why this book? Why now? And some of your experiences that said to you, I need to put this down in written form to share it with other people. And I love so much when we were at Renata's how you said, I ain't writing another one. You better get this one because, honey, everything you need is in this book. So explain to everyone your why, and just some of your experiences that drove you to say, I need to write this down.
First off, thank you so much for having me here because this is really my life's work. It's what I love to do. I have spent over 30 years just taking care of women, and as a sister, as a friend, I have found out that I take care of not only just the women that I would see in the office, but I took care of my sisters and my friends. And I realized, I said, there is a lot of stuff that people do not understand, not just about how their bodies work, but how the whole system of medicine works. And I said, if people that have access, that are smart, that have networks, if they are this confused, then it's tells me that there is a whole population of women out there who are not getting the information that they need. And let me tell you, when I stopped working, stopped practicing 4 years ago. And you know how sometimes you think you're done, but I was just done with that phase of my life. I didn't know what was next. I had no plans to write a book when I stopped practicing, but I knew it was time to do something else. And when this opportunity came up, I said, you know what? These are the things that I wish that the women in my life who don't have me to always pick up the phone to talk to, these are the things that I want them to know. And so I took all those 30 years of experience. I took the common sense of my mother and my family and sort of told stories because I wanted to center the experience. I'm not just talking to you as a doctor. There's that, there's that piece of it, but it's just to let you know that yeah, I get it. I know what you're dealing with, and this is the way I wish someone had talked to me because let me tell you this, Jasmine, it doesn't matter whether you have women in your life, older, peers, these are things we just do not talk about.
At all.
So, don't feel bad to think, oh, well, I don't have anyone to have this conversation with. Most women have not had this conversation with their mothers, their older sisters, their aunties, because just as you were saying, when I was growing up, it was the same deal where when people would have grown folks talk, it was your cue to leave the
To
room.
leave the room.
You had to, you had to go. And so, what I'm trying to do is to say, let's have that grown woman talk, but let's have everybody in the room because we will not get to the place where we know where we need to be and to be able to take care of ourselves until we can have these conversations openly and honestly.
And you know what? I already know that this is a movement and the time is right now. I had a conversation with a young lady that told me, well, I brought your name up, and she was like, oh my gosh, I just spoke to her. I spoke to a young woman named Lisa Cunningham, and she had just
Mhm.
finished a documentary called Me, Period. And I shared with her how it's so interesting how the world works in terms of connectivity at just the right time. Because I explained to her when I was a little girl that not only was I afraid of saying the word period, right? Even as a grown woman, I'm in a room working full with a room full of men and they are, oh, don't say that word. And I'm like, the shame of that. And for
Right.
me as a little girl, when I started my period, I was too scared to tell my mama. Now, for me, there was a little bit more behind it because I was adopted. So I was in the foster care system until I was almost 5. And I was so scared that I was broken because I was bleeding that they might send me back. And so I was like, I'm not going to tell anybody. And that shame stayed with me. And what I told Lisa, and I tell you this now that I didn't get a chance to say to you when we were here for your book signing, was that the same shame that I had then, I had when I became menopausal. And I'll say that because I didn't know what perimenopause was. I didn't know that there was a such thing as perimenopause or whatever. I didn't know any of that stuff because my mama didn't talk to me, which after reading, your book, which I'm still getting through because it's a good slow read and I love it. I love the fact that you're taking in the stories and how you start every chapter with dear sis. I love that. But I realized that her mama probably didn't talk to her either. And so not only was I afraid to say the word period, I was scared to talk about it. Even when I began to feel those shifts in my body, I knew I was getting older, but you tend to work on the outside and you don't think about the inside. You're like, baby, you might look 35, but baby, you not, and your body's not 35. So when those changes begin to happen, I wasn't talking about menopause. I was just as shamed as I was when I was younger. And I think that's what we are experiencing as grown women now for grown women talk. I think this is the part that we're missing because we have the champagne brunches and we talk about the French toast and we talk about, oh, the job and the man and da, da, da. But we don't really talk about what's going on inside of us. Why is it so shameful? Why do you think? I mean, is it patriarch? Like, what is it that makes us so ashamed of it in the first place?
Well, I think that there is a cultural aspect to this. I mean, women have been, women's bodies generally have been shrouded in mystery and shame.
Mm,
We're ashamed of our periods. We're ashamed of, we think that our bodily parts are dirty or nasty or,
yeah.
all of these sort of pejorative things that we think about our female bodies. We're never happy with the body that we're in. I should be thinner. I should be this. My hair should be longer. There has always been the perspective for women that something is wrong with us and it needs to be corrected or hidden from
Yeah.
other people. And I think that that's where we've got to lose some of this stigma about womanhood. We've gotten a little bit better, on the period part of it, because I think that young girls now don't think of periods the same way that I did when I was growing up. It was something you had to hide. Oh my
Yes.
God forbid should anyone ever know you were on your period. And I'm sure every girl in junior high understands this about, oh my God, I'm taking a purse today. So you know what
Mhm.
that means.
Yes,
You got
yes.
to hide all your stuff, like, oh, I got to go to the bathroom, but I got to,
Gotta hide it
how
in
am
your
I going
back
to
pocket.
Exactly, exactly. And so we've gotten a little bit better on that end, but we have got a long ways to go when we get into that perimenopause and menopause part of our lives because we don't talk about it. And it's a couple of things. I think that one, we don't talk about it because for generations, that information has never been passed down. It catches
Mm,
most of us unaware. And then there's also this ageism thing that comes up because I think that women associate menopause with being old, and how you can't be sexy and vibrant and all of these things when, because that happens to old ladies.
yes.
I can't admit that. But, we're trying to craft a different story, a completely different narrative to say, one, perimenopause, which is that term that most women did not know of until recently. And that is that time between probably your early, I'd say your mid 30s and your late 40s. And that is just the time of life when you are changing, when you are transitioning. You're not menopausal yet now, but you're going to be your body is changing and getting ready for menopause. And that happens for women way earlier than you think. Because if I tell you menopause, the average age at which a woman has had her last period is 51, but that transition can take 10 years. So
Mm,
you're 41 or you're 38 and you're 35 and you're thinking menopause has nothing to do with me. I'm like, girl, yes, it does. Because you are starting to have all those symptoms that we think that don't happen until you're
mhm.
50 or 60. They start happening to you in your mid to late 30s, all the way into your early to mid 40s. And that's where I think women are sort of caught unaware because they think that, you know, comes later. It's earlier
Yeah.
than you think.
And I think that's so important again, which is why I was like compelled. I was like, I must get this book because there is so much misinformation out there about women. You're right. I remember thinking this is how in the dark I was. I was like, menopause doesn't happen until you're like 60 years old or 70. That was when I was younger. And then as I began to get older, I still never thought about being perimenopausal. I never thought about any of that stuff. And so by the time I went to the doctor, they were like, honey, do you, we're going to run a blood test on you, but I can assure you. And I was like, nah, not me. I'm too fly. Like, and then I realized that has nothing to do with it. You can be fly, you can feel fabulous. I wasn't having hot flashes. I wasn't going through any of those things. And what I found out, what my hormonal panel told me was, regardless of what you think and what you feel, let me tell you what your body is telling you. It's just telling you in different
Mhm,
ways that you're not thinking
mhm,
about. I was tired all the time. And I thought, well, it's because of my job and it's very demanding. And of course, I'm going to be tired. I was having like, I call them brain farts. I couldn't think of words.
right,
I was forgetting things. And I
right.
was like, well, I got a lot on my plate. I was snapping at people. My baby, my patience, that's sure. And I was like, I've never been like this. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I just kept chalking it up to other things. And I think a lot of women are experiencing that and naming something else because we are good stewards of our health in other areas when it comes to things that are tied to the superficial and the outside. Like we go to the gym every day, we eat
Right,
right, we stop eating
right,
sugar, we do all of those things, which is great, but we're not taking care of the internal side, including, your lady parts. We're just not having those
right.
conversations. And
Right.
I think this book has taught me more since that time I first met you, which was not that just a few weeks ago,
Mhm.
has
Yeah,
taught me
yeah.
more than I have known in all of my adulthood. All
Well,
of it.
there are two things, Jasmine. It's that, we don't talk amongst ourselves as women. We don't talk intergenerationally. But let me say this, the medical profession hasn't covered itself in glory in terms of telling women about this too, because you go in for your annual GYN visit, and we're good about talking about birth control. We're talking about, we talk about birth, how to get pregnant, how not to get pregnant, how to be pregnant successfully. But here's the deal, you may or may not be pregnant in your lifetime, and that is every woman's choice, or sometimes circumstances dictate that. But menopause and this transition to menopause is the one universal female experience. No matter how you experience it, you will go through menopause. And I think that to have something that 100% of women will experience and to not give them the information
Mm.
that they need ahead of time to know how to navigate that transition is problematic. And I think that we in the medical profession have really got to do a better job. But I found that in the 30 years that I was practicing, and I did talk about menopause with my patients, and I would talk to them when they were 40, not when you're 60, not when it's over, but just so you know what to expect. So you think, yeah, no, I'm not going crazy. Or, because I am now for the first time in my life, I'm anxious, I'm irritable, I've got rage, I've got depression, all of these things that tend to come up in that transition. The solution isn't, well, go see a therapist or go here, go take an antidepressant. It's to tie all these things together to tell you that they're all part of this natural transition that all women will experience, some differently than others. However, this is the message that if there's one message I want all of your listeners to know is this, is that one, you're not alone. And two, there are solutions if you are miserable. Because I think that the one thing we have done consistently is that we have normalized women's suffering. We
Mm.
suffer from, and it starts from the day you get your period, with cramps, with, we have depression, we have migraines, we have autoimmune diseases. There's all of these things that women have that we minimize. We've become, sort of indoctrinated into thinking, well, women, that's what we do. We're in
Yep.
pain, we're in suffer. And no. And I'm telling you right now, if for anyone out there who is perimenopausal or menopausal and you are suffering from hot flashes, from sleeplessness, from painful sex, from urinary tract infections, know that there is a solution. And the answer shouldn't be, well, just grin and bear it, or I'm just going to hold tight and one day it'll stop. That's unacceptable to
Yeah,
me.
and I think it's also understandable in terms of us being good stewards of our own health. Like I am
Right.
one of those people, that I go to my gynecologist every year. I get my mammograms every year. But because I am not a professional, and if she doesn't say to me, At the age that you are, you really need to be looking out for these symptoms. And how are you feeling in that aspect? They basically say, lay back, put your feet up. We're going to do this. Looks good. And
Now,
that's it. And I'm like,
that's
okay, well,
and
what happened? She didn't talk to me and
well,
say, hey, look out for this, look out for that.
and to me that's crazy, because I can't understand why. I would tell you what to do. I would talk to you about high blood pressure. I would talk to you about these things. But again, this one thing that every woman would experience, and for your doctor to have never brought it up to, or at least give you a little heads up. I used to always say to my patients, I would say, when they get to be about 40, I would say, okay, now let me just tell you what's about to happen here. So some of
You
these
about to
things
feel
may
like an
happen.
inferno in a little bit.
Right. None of these things may happen because if you really want to say, and this is, again, how we've been sort of indoctrinated. But the one thing that women fear the most, I'd say, is that when you tell them, when they start talking about, I'm gaining weight. Okay. Well, gaining weight is one of those things that happens a lot in that perimenopausal transition. So, but just because you may gain weight doesn't mean you will. But if I told you ahead of time, wouldn't that be more helpful than trying to address it 20 pounds later?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just tell you this. I say, look, things are changing. This is what's going to happen. You're going to have to make some adjustments now because 40 is not 20 and 50 is certainly not 30.
Yeah.
So,
And let me say this real
giving
quick,
you the
because
heads up.
I want to get right into this because I think the media, I listen, I know I'm part of that problem. I think the thing that can be irritating is we see all of these stars who are getting pregnant when they're, 45 and 50. And all of a sudden, it sends out the message that, oh, it's possible for everybody. And, of course, already being a female and then being a Black female, when you're trying to get to a certain goal in life, you put everything else to the side. I'll give you my own personal story. I knew I was going to have to be better, work harder, longer in order to be successful in this field. And I chose that. And I kept saying, eventually, I had a son when I was very young, but I want another baby. But I got time. I got time. I know I'm 30, but I got time. And then I was 35. I'm fine. When I'm 40, I'm fine. And then I got to the point where I realized, okay, first of all, I didn't know that I am born with this is true. As smart as I like to think I am, I did not know until much later that you are born with a certain amount of eggs and you lose those eggs. You do not get more, not at Christmas, not on your birthday. Your eggs are your eggs, and they are as old as you are, and the quality of those eggs. No one had ever broken it down to me like that. And I kept thinking, so all this time I thought I had time. And I don't. And then the risks that come, if you're even able to get pregnant later, the risks that are associated with that. I think that too is problematic.
And that's why when I wrote the chapter on perimenopause, I very purposefully, didn't just talk about the symptoms of perimenopause, and there are 34 of those at least, but I really talked about what that meant in terms of fertility, because that is the conversation that is not had. And again, no judgment, but I want you to know that because you're absolutely right. The perception is, oh, well, I'll just have a baby at 50, or I'll go have IVF, or I'll go have something. It's like, well, you know, there are a lot of ways to do that, but a lot of the people that you are looking at who are 48, 50, 52 having babies have spent considerable time, money,
And money.
effort, and a lot of them will get pregnant but may get pregnant with someone else's egg, or they may have banked embryos from 10 years ago. It's not the same process as
Right.
when you are 30. And all I say to that is every woman has to make her own decisions about when and where to have children or not, but at least know what the option is and be realistic about what the options
About
are.
what the options
And that's
are.
why,
Mhm.
yeah, and that's why I really made a point of talking about perimenopause, not just in terms of the things that you will experience, but what that means for your fertility. And to the extent that it helps you make better decisions or decisions earlier, just know that. That's all I
Yeah.
want you to do. And let me say, because this is something that I feel so strongly about, is that if I tell you that women generally don't get the conversation about menopause and what to expect and all of that, Black women get the least of the least. And I know this isn't shocking to you because you could apply this to just about anything.
Mhm.
But there is a certain acceptance of suffering in the sense that we take on a lot. We complain not so much. So when you see your doctor, the things that you should be bringing up at that visit, you don't, because you just think, well, that's just, one more thing in this continuum of suffering
Mhm.
that women have to deal with. And
So
I'm
true.
telling you, no, don't do that. Do
Don't
not
do that.
accept that because, I said, Jasmine, look at you. I had a post today and I was saying to myself, it really made me smile because as we are watching, Kamala Harris ascend to, the presidency, and
Yes.
let's say yay for that.
Yes.
But here's the deal. Think about this. And I said, there has probably been never a time in the history of womanhood where we have looked at a woman who is almost 60, she'll be
Mhm.
60 in a few months, and said, oh my good, this is the youthful candidate. This is the vibrant candidate. This is the person, we have got to redefine what aging women look like. And however you thought your aunties looked 30 years ago, that's not us.
Yes.
And that's not how we're choosing to live our lives. We're doing different things. We're moving on. I mean, I wrote my book when I was 64 years old. So, I am in no way done, nor do I feel like I'm ready to go sit in a rocking chair. I got things to do.
And look at
And
fabulous
thank
while you
goodness.
doing it. What?
And yeah, and see, this is what I'm saying. And once women are no longer afraid to admit that, yeah, I'm out here and
Mhm.
I'm doing things, and I don't have to be defined by someone else's perception of what they think 60 looks like or what they think 65 looks like. It's like, no. And we can defy that. But to do that, it really depends on making sure that we are showing up as our best selves. If we are having difficulty or if menopause is hard for you, then understand, girl, go get some hormone therapy. I don't
Baby.
understand why people are choosing to be miserable.
Let me
Go
tell you what
get
I
it.
think it is. I'm gonna tell you what I think it is. I think it is because I heard the same thing. I am on hormone therapy, but for the longest I was terrified because I was getting one message, and that one message was,
Right.
if you get on hormone therapy, you're going to get cancer and you're probably going to die. And so once I found out, because like I said, my everybody's different, so I didn't have the same symptoms as some of my girlfriends who have to carry fans and hot flashes and whatever. And when I thought, okay, we're around the same age. How come I'm not hot flashing? But I was having other symptoms, sleepless
Right.
nights, insomnia. My mind wouldn't stop racing, panic attacks, all of the other things were there, but no one had talked to me about them.
Right.
But once I began to ask questions of my GYN, I had to ask her. That's when I found out and I said, I see what my girlfriends are going through. They're fabulous, but they on fire. I don't want to be on fire like that. I don't want to be sweating profusely, and at the time I was on camera and I was like, that are you kidding? And so I did my research though, and I found out that the hormone therapy today is not what it was back then. It is so much better. They know more. And I'm going to tell you, I got really irritated because, and I know you already know this. My first thought was, here is another thing that they have been gatekeeping against us as Black women. Because I remember the first time I heard one of my girlfriends say that she had frozen her eggs, and I was like, I always felt that was something that wasn't for us because no doctors were talking to Black women about freezing eggs. I didn't know anybody, and I know I at that time I felt like I know a lot of girls,
Hmm.
and none of them have
Hmm.
ever talked about that. And then I thought, okay, well, how come we don't know that?
Hmm.
The same thing went with the journey of womanhood from your period to peri to post and all of that. How come nobody, the gatekeepers, the white women and other women, they knew about all of these things, but the only thing I was getting was the message that you can get on it if you want to. You'll be dead in 6 months. Now I'm like, okay, so we are over here, like you said, suffering in silence, not telling. I read where, you talked about how, the things that were going on in your family with your mother and your grandmother. And then I thought, wow, I had never thought about, as you say in the book, you ought to have records going back at least 3 generations. Ask those questions, but make it fun. Find out what's going on so you can figure out
Right.
genetically where what you need to be concerned about. Even though
Right.
I know you say it may not happen to you, you know, a blessing for you understanding what you had come through in your family, but you were blessed enough to not have to deal with that. But everybody doesn't have that. And I felt like this book really just blew the gate wide open because I feel like any woman should pick up this book because it is a manual. It is the answers that you need. I love the fact that you know, you pair titles of songs and it's almost like a playlist to go with it. Like what's going on and it's getting hot in here and all of those things. And then at the end, you give references and you say this is what I would recommend. So even though I don't have you on speed dial, I kinda do.
Right.
If I need
Right.
the answer, and I think
Right.
for the longest, Black women have not had a Bible, a grown woman's Bible, not about spirituality, but about your body, which is far more important because when you talk about redefining, speaking about Kamala, when you redefine what 60 looks like, it's not just about on the outside, it is also on the inside. You know, I'm
Mhm.
57. And I tell people all the time, let me tell you something. I'm gonna get my sleep because I know sleep is important. So you can call me if you want to after 9 o'clock, baby. It's going to voicemail. Don't bother me. I try my best to eat right because I understand this is not the body of a 27-year-old. Although it looks like it on the outside,
It does. It
on the
does. Let me just
inside,
say.
doc, on the inside, come on, the inside tells the truth. And so I think one of the things that I think it's so important in the message that you are spreading, and I'm going to do everything I can to assist with your platform is if we are not taking care of ourselves on the inside and these situations, like I had no idea about menopause and not just the things that everybody makes fun of, but the things that
Right.
you taught me at the session about you need to be thinking about your cholesterol, you need to be thinking about high blood pressure, you need to be thinking about all of these other things, bone density. I ain't never thought about no bone density. All of these
Right.
things that affect you because we look at it as how menopause affects us in terms of what will people say and
Right.
how will it affect, you know, how I look? How about how you live and the quality of your
Right.
life?
Right. And let me say, for people that are out there that are having hot flashes, and and we laugh about hot flashes. Women, we think it's funny. It's just a joke. Oh, look at her, she's sweating if somebody's got a fan. And I want to tell you that hot flashes are not benign. Hot flashes are often harbingers of other things that
Mm,
can be an indicator of impending cardiovascular disease. They interfere with your sleep. Women who have hot flashes are more likely to gain weight, more likely to have type 2 diabetes. So the point is, treat the hot flashes. Don't endure. Don't endure the hot flashes. And the answer to it is so simple, which is hormone therapy. And that there are far more women who can that we take ourselves out of that equation. And it's not just, I don't blame women for that because I say we in the medical profession have not done a good job about
mm,
making that clear. And all we talk about is breast cancer. And there's so much that you have to look out for other than breast cancer. That's important. Get your mammograms, do your breast self exams. Yes, but the things that are more likely to impact the quality of your life as you age are cardiovascular disease, diabetes, all of these things that are so common that none of us can look at our families and not find someone who has one, two, or all of these things. And so when I tell you know your family history, I'm telling you this not to scare you, but only to say that you need to know what things to look out for.
mm.
You know, and that doesn't necessarily have to be your fate, but if you know that you have a history, someone in your family has had stroke or someone in your family has diabetes, there are many things that you can do lifestyle wise, medication wise, to minimize the impact of those things that we may be predisposed to, but it does not necessarily mean that those are things that we're going to have. We can make changes, and that's another message that I want women to get is that we have more control over how we age and how we sort of go through this whole process than we think.
Yeah.
And it is not just about, oh, well, I'm going to wait until I get diabetes and then I'm going to be on Ozempic. No, how about this? Let's not get diabetes. You know, let's not have some of those things. And if you know it, again, ahead of time, it's far easier to control it 10 years before than 10 years after. So,
Without
take that
question.
message, take that power that you have because you do. I don't want anyone to throw their hands up in resignation to say, oh, well, my mom has diabetes and my dad's on dialysis, so I guess that's my fate. No, those are things that you need to know that you need to address sooner versus later so you don't end up in that same place.
And I think you make a great point in your book in terms of the education being key. It was one one line that stood out to me, and I was like, "Wow!" Because a lot of women always wonder, "Well, when is it? When is menopause over?" And I saw you said menopause is like a diamond, baby. It is forever. I was like, "Wait a minute, forever, forever."
Forever, ever, forever, ever.
Damn. But I think those types of things you have to know, and I'd be curious to know because again, with just trying to learn more about our bodies. Let's say I'm not 57. Say I'm 40, and I don't really know if I'm perimenopausal, menopausal. I don't know any of those things, but I want to have a baby. What are my chances? What kind of testing do I need to be looking into? What should I be thinking about in terms of my own health, mental and physical? Like, is it possible, and what kind of steps can I take to ensure that if I do get pregnant, I have a healthy pregnancy? Or is it even possible? At this point, like I said,
Right.
the internet, everybody wants to be an internet doctor, and I am guilty of it. I know you call me out in the book. I am at 2 a.m. trying to figure out, hold up. I feel like I think I got, like, I have diagnosed
Yeah.
myself with so many things. It's ridiculous. But kind of walk me through, if I am that person, what should I be doing at that age at 40? What should I be doing?
You know what? I think that everyone, regardless of your age, should really institute a healthy lifestyle, and that is exercise, eat a healthy diet. And again, we're not trying to, be the food police here, but again, I'm not, I would say a based diet is ideal. Most people can't do that. I don't do that
I ain't gonna
because
do it.
I'm not going to do that. But, minimize the things, cut down on processed foods, try not to, if you're going to have a burger from McDonald's, have it once a quarter, not once a week, or certainly not 2 or 3 times a week. So, what you're trying to do is do the best that you can. And I think that everybody, regardless of where you're starting, can do better on their diet. More fresh fruits, more fresh vegetables. I would say, again, sleep is important, diet is important, exercise is important. And obviously, if you smoke, don't smoke.
Yeah.
Cut back on alcohol. I didn't say cut it out, but cut back, because even though we use alcohol as sometimes the the remedy for the
Mhm.
stress that we feel in our lives, just know that the alcohol sometimes is exacerbating our problems, our sleep problems, our certainly our mental acuity, all of that. So I say cut back. So everybody, we all have room for improvement, but if you do those simple things, you're going to be in pretty darn good shape. Now, that being said, if you're trying to be pregnant at 40, there are more women pregnant over 40 now than probably there have ever been in modern times, because so many of us are busy. We're doing things, we've
Mhm.
been, career wise, school, not finding a partner that you want to have a baby with until later in life. Those are real life things. Is it impossible? No. My mother had me when she was almost 45 years old. Now, that being said, let me make this clear. I was baby number 8, and I'm sure she was horrified at the prospect, but,
You were
she was
oops.
like, "Oh, she was not." I'm sure she was not thinking about, "Oh, I need one more, just one
Yeah.
more." But it does matter, earlier, but see, but 40 is different than 45.
Mhm.
41 is different than 47. So as you get older, your fertility changes in your 40s, and you lose probably a larger chunk of your fertility from year to year between 40 and 50 than you certainly do between 30 and 40.
Mm.
Because just as you said, we are born with all the eggs we're ever going to have. And the reason that we go through menopause is really not because we run out of eggs. We didn't run out of them. It's like, oop, that was you ovulated your last egg and now you're in menopause. No, it's just the quality of the eggs that we have remaining
Mm.
diminishes because our eggs are as old as we are. So they are, imagine you buy, and I love analogies, but if you buy a carton of eggs, they're fresh when you get them. And then they stay
Yeah.
in the refrigerator and they stay in the refrigerator. And at some point, those eggs go bad, whether you use them or not. Well, that's
Mhm.
kind of the same thing with us. It's like those eggs will no longer be able to be fertilized. But menopause is because, again, just not that we've run out necessarily, but because they are as old as we are and they don't really function the same way. But and even that being said, and I don't ever like to close the door on anyone's abilities to be a mother, and I do talk about this in a book, and I talk about all the ways you can be a mother. Okay, so if your eggs aren't good, well, you can do donor eggs, and if you want to have that experience of being pregnant, there's nothing wrong with that, so there's no shame, there's no shade. You have to just decide how you want to be a mother. You can adopt, you can be a foster parent, you
Yeah.
can do, and see, look at you. See, now whoever decided and took that, said, who would have thought that things would have turned out as well as they did? They do. So that's why I said I want people to understand being a mother, the desire to be a mother is something that many of us have, but there are many pathways to get there. And just
Yes.
because one is closed doesn't mean that the others are precluded. So just keep that thought, keep an open mind, and just as long as you're realistic about what you want and how you want to be there, we're here to support all of that. But your health should not be the reason why. And that's why I said the healthier you are coming into a pregnancy, regardless of your age, the better you're going to do in that pregnancy. And I think that we cannot, when we talk a lot about maternal mortality, and we do and we
Mm.
should, but what we don't talk about is what's leading up to a pregnancy, because so many women enter pregnancies in poor health. And we
I
got
will
to
say
address
this,
that.
we have to address
We
that,
got
and
to address
that's,
that.
another thing, about me trying to make sure that as many people as I can talk to and tell about this book, as many people as I can gift it to, because, again, using my own life as an example, being adopted, right? Not having access to what my history was. And I got pregnant so very early because my mama didn't talk to me about my period. She didn't talk to me about, having sex and what will happen. And I had no clue. And on top of that, I was preeclamptic. So here I
Mhm.
was walking around with massive headaches. I'm 15 years old. I have no idea what's wrong with me. By the time I find out, it's too late. I have to be hospitalized. My son was in the hospital for 3 months because he was barely 2 pounds when I had him. All of those things, when I did find my biological family, I found out my mother went through that. My first cousin went through that. It was right there, but I had no idea. So I think being a good steward of your health, I think having some answers to things that you may be going through that you and your friends are not talking about, i.e., wanting to have a baby, i.e., I'm having hot flashes, or all of a sudden out of nowhere, I'm having panic attacks, or I feel like I'm crazy, or I just feel like I just don't want to live no more. I don't know what's wrong with me. My head is
Right.
crazy. I've lost my zest for life.
Right.
It is so many things that I think we as Black women, and I think now more than ever, considering we are the most educated, the most entrepreneurial group of people. We are the most the most everything at the moment. Like Black Girl Magic is on fire right now. And what I am aiming to do is to make sure that not only are we making sure that we are educated academically, that we are learning to live in a way that we never have. We're traveling more. We're learning. I mean, it's so much going through my head right now because things that I had never thought about. I tell my brand manager all the time, make sure that you have a plan for your life. And I'm not talking about just now. I mean, as you said, be a benefactor, not a burden. All of those things are important that no one told me. And here I was, being smart, living life, making sure I got myself educated, making sure I got a good job. And now I've got all these wonderful shoes, but I had not thought about menopause. I hadn't thought about my
Mhm.
my body
Mhm.
in terms of getting older and what that
Mhm.
looked like and what is my plan moving
Mhm.
forward. And so in this book, Grown Woman Talk, you just do such an amazing job of not making it scary. I didn't feel
No.
scared as I was reading it. I wasn't afraid to turn the next page. I really felt like you were my dear sister sitting next to me or my auntie telling me, okay, so this is what you need to look for. And if you have these symptoms, this is what I suggest. And let me put a little song, little music with it. It's kind of like the medicine that
You
they make you
gotta,
take. You put a little
you
honey
know
with it,
what?
make it go down better.
Right. You can't make it, because that's the one thing that I said. I don't want to make it dry because people were like, oh, okay, that's boring, change it. But I think the book is a reflection of who I am. And that's how I talk to my sisters, my friends, my patients, because as I say, it all comes from a place of love. And you know what? And we're on a team together.
Yes.
I want you to do well. And I want you to have everything that you need to do well and be well as you age. And we're going to do this thing. And let me say, I think that I have found that I have had so much more success when you talk to people like they're adults, when you talk to people like they are someone that you genuinely care about, and we're on this journey together. It's so much easier to get people to do the things that they know they need to do when they're not being, chastised
Yes.
about this. You need to do this, go do this. You walk out, roll your eyes and say, yeah, let me go get a Snickers bar because that got on my
Or a
nerves.
glass of wine. See?
You yeah, exactly. So you know what? But we're on the same team here. And I think that, the more the better decisions you can make about how you want to live your life. And I think the more as I say, each one teach one. Now now I want you to go tell your friends, and that person should tell someone, such that all of this misinformation, and let's be real, there is racism within medicine
Mm,
itself. That's the reason why when a lot of Black women don't get the same care that majority women do about
mhm.
whatever it is. Doesn't matter whether it's pregnancy or cancer. The more you know, the better you're able to advocate for yourself.
Absolutely. I
So that's
believe
why I
that
said I want you
wholeheartedly.
to have the tools.
I love that, and I love, another point in the book that I think is worth making to kinda close out on is the quality of life in terms of being fulfilled all the way around. Because I think there is, and no matter what color you are, just being a woman, I think
Right.
that there is this thing that when you get past a certain age, you can't dress like this, you can't go do this and that, even when it comes to sex, like, what are you doing? When really at the end of the
Right.
day, there is no reason why you can't have enjoyable intimacy and you can't be celebrated in life as you become older and you're still a sexual being and you're still
Right.
fabulous and fly and all of that, and age should have nothing to do with that. And I think learning and educating yourself every step of the way. No one did it for me, but I'm going to make sure that I try my best to do it for other people because you're right. When you learn, you reach back and you teach someone else. And I think that is what makes us stronger. It makes us have happier, healthier relationships. And at the end of the day, I want to be able to say, that I went out the way I started. I was fabulous in the beginning and I was fabulous in the end. That's my plan, doc. I don't know if it's going to work, but that's my plan.
But you know what? Well, that's my plan too. So we just need to make sure that we keep doing all the things we need to do to execute. Because, a very dear friend of mine's mother just passed away a couple of days ago. And I all I could say to myself is that, I always say when I die, I want it to be sad, not tragic. You know,
Mm.
and this woman was 95 years old. And let me just say, and she was good, living on her own. I mean, just fabulous, and then just didn't wake up one day. And I was like, see, that's how I wanted to do. She was in her house doing her thing on her own steam until she wasn't. And that's how I think all of we're all going to leave here one day.
Yes,
But
we
let's
are.
hope that whatever that period is, that we are good for as long as we can possibly be good. How many ever years that is, let's not spend the last 10 of them in a nursing home. Let's be able
Exactly.
to say that we are on our own steam. And as we say, be a benefactor, not a burden, because that's should be our goals as we age.
I love it. And I tell you what, grown woman talk is going to help all the women who pick it up. And I'm going to make sure, like I said, that they know about it. I think having this as a guide, because everybody ain't lucky enough to have Dr. Sharon. to call and be like, "Hey, girl, something ain't right. I'm itching," or "My boob hurts." So, well, everybody's not, and of course, we can't continue to look up internet doctors, whatever it is, WebMD that I stay on. But I'm doing better. I'm off of that
Right,
now. I'm doing better. But I
right,
think now that I have this book, it has answered a lot of questions for me already. I am no longer afraid. And I can't really say that I was ever scared of aging as much as I was nervous about how people would treat me. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right,
I've
right.
always been a good kind of realist in terms of I know I was born, I know that I will die, my time is coming. God willing, it will be in the future. But what I was more afraid of is I never wanted people to feel like it's time to put her out to pasture. Like it's like she
Right.
is no use anymore, or she can't drop it like it's hot no more. Now I could drop it, but Doc, I don't know if I can bring it back up. Not as quickly as it used to, okay? But I think I was more afraid of that. But having this kind of good girlfriend conversation in book form has just made me rethink, reassess, and be more excited because I feel like I'm better equipped now to talk to other people and what I don't know, I can't send them to you, but I can send them to you. You know what I'm
And you
saying?
know what else? And this is another thing I want women to know, because I know that there is a real problem out there in terms of access, in terms of finding doctors that do know how to take care of women and menopause and deal with their menopausal symptoms. And that's really one of the reasons that I am the medical advisor at Alloy Women's Health, because we do realize there's a huge opportunity gap in terms of how women are able to access care. So, for anybody who cannot find a doctor who will treat them when they are symptomatic, then go to myalloy.com, because we do have menopause trained doctors there that will not only assess you, but treat you and make sure that you get what you need. And that is, I think, vitally important. I don't want any woman to feel bad and to think that that is their only option, to just wait and wait and wait until the hot flashes go away. No,
Yes.
treat them. And let me say this, Jasmine, because I want to say thank you again for having me to have this conversation. But let me say this, looking at you and looking at all the wonderful women out there who have been brave enough to speak out about menopause, like Michelle Obama, like Halle Berry, like Naomi Watts. There are just any number of women that have stepped forward to say, yeah, I'm menopausal, so what? And look at me. I think that we are putting, and you in particular, are putting a different face on what a menopausal woman looks like. And there is nothing to be scared of there.
Nothing at all. And I have you to thank for it. I'm not going to lie. I just appreciate you. You're a godsend, not just to me, but to anybody who will watch this and listen to this interview and pick up this book. And I think, again, one, having it, passing it on, passing it on, and passing it on. I think we're in a position now that we can change the narrative about what it means to age as a woman and to become menopausal. There's no need to wear it like a scarlet letter, if you will, the way it, back in my grandmother's day, that she going through the change is what they used to say. I'm going through the change, but baby, it's different. It's gonna be fabulous. And it's good to know that I'm in good company. I'm in good
Yes, you
company.
are.
And I just appreciate you. Thank you again for taking the time. I know you're busy, enjoying your summer. I love to hear that. Having a wonderful time. I love to see it because you're a walking example of how how everybody wants to be.
Well, you know what? And here's also the good news. And you can always just call me up. You're like, "Oh, I'm not sure about that."
Don't
Girl, you
play,
can just
Doc.
call.
Don't play,
You can
Doc.
call me.
I was like, girl, let me ask you a question. Something is off. I don't know if it's my pH balance or something ain't right. I don't know. But let me tell you what I love about that. Not just that, what you've offered to me, and I am so grateful for that. But I wish that we as women would be more honest in our good girlfriend circle. That when we do have issues like that, that we can say, hey, and I'll tell you
Mhm.
this really quick, girl. Now, I get paid to talk, so I could keep talking, but I'm not going to. But it's a couple of things that I think are very important, worth mentioning as to why you should seek out a second opinion or you should have these conversations with your girlfriend. I remember right before the pandemic, I was having some issues where I was having some pain in my ovaries and I didn't know what was wrong. And, my doctor, the first thing she said was, you probably just need a hysterectomy." And I was like, That's like that? Like, okay. So I was like, well, she knows more than I do, but I feel uncomfortable. The only thing that saved me from getting that was because of what I do as a journalist and I research and I read. I had already read tons of stories where Black women are given that option more than anybody else so quickly. And I remembered, I said, you know what? I have a GYN that I used to see when I lived in New York. Her name is Dr. Nancy Jasper. Amazing. Tell it like it is, sister. I called her and I said, listen, I know, I don't live there anymore. I'm my doctor, but I have a question. I'm stuck in the middle. I don't know if I should get this hysterectomy. She said, don't you do it. Don't you do it. She said, you go get a second opinion. She said, if you have to fly to New York, I will check you out. She said, but that doesn't sound right. Turns out she was right. I did not need a hysterectomy. And I'm so glad that I was not too embarrassed or ashamed to say it out loud that something was off, something doesn't feel right down here. But now something don't feel right up here or right here. Enough for me to check it out. And I'm so glad I did because I think a lot of Black women are having unnecessary surgeries, going through
Right.
unnecessary, situations because we're too afraid to speak out. So again, it's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful that you wrote this book. And you're right, it can't be your last book because everything I feel like I went to school and I didn't. I feel like it's so much in here. So I just appreciate your time. Thank you for offering that to me. And don't think I'm not going to take you up on it. I ain't going to blow your phone up all the time, because, I'm not crazy like that. But if I really have a problem and I'm like, I
You
know Dr. Malone will know I'm going to have to give her a shout.
You know what? I mean it, and I mean it. I wouldn't have offered it if I didn't mean it. And it's so funny because I know Nancy Jasper. It's
You
like it's a
do.
small, small world. Of course I do.
She was my doctor for probably 15 years. And let me tell you something.
Yes.
Every time when I was in that phase of I'm focused on my career, focused on my career. When I was about 38, 37, 38, she said, "Look here. You trying to have more kids?" I could have been 35. I don't remember. You know the brain, the menopause.
Mhm.
I said, "Yes, but why?" She said, listen here, honey. If you're trying to have a baby, you need to get busy having this baby. Now, what you gonna do?" I was like, "Okay, Dr. Jasper." But
See?
she was that
Uh,
tell it like it is, and I love
yes.
that about her. I love that about her. And I am not
Yes.
gonna lie, I'm not gonna make it a race thing, but I think also the quality of care she gave me, I trusted her because she was a sister. I really did, and
Yes.
and she
Yes,
would
yes,
tell
yes.
it to
I
me
get
the way I needed to hear it, and she was my first
Mhm.
call. When I got that, she was my first call. She said, "No, ma'am, don't you do that." And I love that. And so for other people who are looking, myalloy.com is where they can find information and help when they need it. Everybody else, I'm going to make sure y'all get this book because I'm going to be talking about it. I'm going to gift it. I got some sorority sisters coming to town in a couple of weeks. I already bought them this book and we going to spread the word because, baby, we going to age gracefully and we going to be happy and full of joy instead of misery. So take that escape off. You ain't got to be superwoman all the time. Listen, we going to be fabulous and fierce together, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharon. I appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your trip, and I hope to see you again real soon. If you're out in LA, just please hit me up because when I come your way, I'm calling.
Okay, that's a deal.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good
All
day.
right.
Bye
All
bye.
right, you too.
Bye bye.